Soft blocking, what is it? I'm Tyczka, I'm here with Schwarzkopf Professional, and today I'm going to demonstrate honey blonde hair color techniques using a soft blocking method. Soft blocking is essentially a more diffused method of color blocking. When doing a soft blocking technique, we always have to consider what the hair is going to look like after. So during your consultation, you're always going to want to talk to your client about what kind of haircut they're wanting, how they're going to be naturally styling it, and if you're going to be doing any significant bangs or layers, you're going to want to pre-cut that in order to place your foils in the correct pattern that they should be in. All right, so now I'm going to take my model here and we're going to go pre-cut our layers and our bangs. All right, so we've pre-cut all the significant bangs and layers that we need to in order to accurately place our foils for our soft blocking technique. The idea behind the soft blocking technique for her is we want this to we want all of the blocking to billow out around the bangs and up from underneath the bangs and up from underneath through here. So the idea behind cutting the shapes in there is that we can already see where our slopes start to begin. We're going to have the highest concentration of blonde in the front to less in the back. So therefore, we have to know what angle this hair is going to sit at in order to know how to place our foils best. And now we're going to move on to mixing and sectioning out for our placement. So although we're working with a virgin hair application today, we want to make sure that we best prep the hair for the best results when lifting and depositing color. I'm going to go in with our hair primer, and that has a chelating agent as well as it's a porosity equalizer. So as talked about, we're going to go in with our BLONDME 9 Plus Premium Lightener, and we're going to be using 1/2 and 1/20 volume for this application. In addition to that, we want even though we're doing a honey blonde, we want a little bit of toning agent in there. So we're going to go in with our violet additive as well. So our reason for going in with a formulation that has 7 volume and 1/2 and 1/20 volume is because we're going to be doing an application that's a mix of fine slicing and weaves. Because we're going to have more hair in the slicing sections, we want to have a higher developer because we're going to have more hair in those foils. When we get to where we're doing our weaves, we're going to take that developer a little bit lower so that we can be more gentle on the hair. So our first formulation, we're going to go in with our BLONDME 9 Plus. I'm going to do about 25 grams to start because I like to do it in smaller doses rather than larger ones. And we're gonna go in with just our 7 volume. And I'm gonna do a ratio of 1 to 1.5 for this. So we're doing 50 here. This is our first formulation, and then we're gonna go in with 1/2 and 1/20 for our slices formulation. For this one, I'm gonna do a ratio of 1 to 2 because whenever we use a little bit more lightener, that can actually weaken the formula just a little bit. And even though we're wanting to have a lot more lift on our slicing sections, we also still want to make sure that it's as gentle as possible. So our 7 volume application is going to be a ratio of 1 to 1.5. Our 20 volume application is going to be 1 to 2. What I'd really like to highlight when mixing up BLONDME is you definitely want to mix this up slow. I typically just use my brush and I work it through very slowly. Reason being, you do not want this lightener to aerate. We have a lot of persulfates within this lightener, and the more oxygen you feed them, the more you're gonna have potential expansion. If we mix it just a little bit slower, we build that time into our schedule, we're gonna have a better consistency and experience with BLONDME. I'm using my smaller brush for our 7 volume application. That helps me keep track of which one is 7 and which one is 20. But also, since we're gonna be doing weaves with this formulation, I don't need as big of a brush because I don't have to be as aggressive with my technique. Once again, slow mixing up, and really in all reality, this only takes about like 30 seconds longer. The patience really pays off whenever applying BLONDME and mixing it properly. This ratio was 1 to 1.5, and that is a great consistency. You don't see any running. All right, and finally, we're going to be using our BLONDME Bleach and Tone Violet additive. Even though we're going for a honey blonde, we still want to make sure that we have a little bit of toning agent in there because we're not looking for yellow hair. We're looking for a very sophisticated honey blonde. So by adding a little bit of this violet, we are going to be lifting and neutralizing just a bit all at the same time. I tend to just do a ribbon of it. You can reference the sheet that comes with your bleach and tone additives for the jumping off points of how much of each to add. Because we're working with virgin hair, we're not battling a ton of underlying pigment. So that is why we're just choosing the violet additive. As you can see, little ribbon there. Little ribbon there. And you really don't need to add a ton in order to get some really pretty neutralization. Now, when you first start to mix it up within your lightener, it can look a little bit frightening just because it does change the tone that much. You have to, in my experience, add quite a bit of this additive in order for it to push the hair into past neutralization to where it is depositing any sort of color. But that is why, to start off with, follow the manufacturer's recommendations on how much to add. And then as you get to know the product, you can start learning for specific clients exactly how much of each you want to use. All right, now that we've let our primer sit for a little bit, we just brushed her out and we pre-sectioned her with very easy sectioning, front, back, ear to ear. And we are going to start in the back with our application. All right, so the reason we are going to start in the back is because we tend to generate quite a bit of heat back here, but these are also simultaneously, if the foils are finished, the easiest ones for me to pull. We are going to start with our woven section here, and this is going to be quite a large section. It is actually going to be our thickest section when we're working. And because I want a seamless grow out for most of my clients, that's just the day and age that we're living in, I'm also going to be doing a back combing technique for this. Now for this section, this is where we're going to be using our formulation with 20 volume. Once again, reason being is because we have the most hair in this section. The more hair we have in a foil, the more lightening power we need, and because I do want this to pull up evenly, we're gonna use 2 formulations to achieve that. I'm gonna just diffuse this color a little bit into the root area so that we continue on with that seamless transition. And you're gonna wanna make sure your saturation is good. I know that in the salon, it can feel really time-consuming to make up so many mixtures, but I definitely would also say that the biggest mistakes that we make in the salon come with pre-lightening hair or lifting hair, blonding hair. Oftentimes, the mistakes that you end up correcting far outweigh the amount of time that you spend mixing up multiple formulations. So I say build in the time during your mixing so that you don't end up correcting your blondes. So we're gonna do another woven section, but it is going to be slightly thinner than our one before. We're gonna leave out just a tiny, tiny little halo of hair there. And this is where even more of our diffusion starts. Not only are we looking for diffusion from root to end, but we're also looking for it from most dense highlighting all the way up to our finest foil. Reason being, we want the majority of the density of the hair color and the color blocking to be around the face, and then transition out as we get to further along towards the top of the head. So as you can see, this is a little finer, going in with our 20. I do not keep mixing stronger as I move to the front because A, this application is fast, it is not time consuming, and also given the way that I'm able to foil it, I can very easily pull these foils early if they tend to be ready before the front is. It's a lot easier to pull the foils from the back in this application if they're ready than in the front. Given the density of her hair back here, I'm gonna do one more fine weave before we work, or fine slice before we work into our woven sections. If you don't pre-lighten enough of it underneath here, by the time all of this hair falls over, you're gonna be kind of covering up the lightening work that you've done. Essentially, the density of the hair, that will change the application by how many weaves versus how many slices you do. Somebody that has denser hair, you're not only going to be doing a lot more slicing and weaving, you're gonna work your way up a little higher on the head. In that case scenario, you might start to change your developers as you work towards the front because it might take just a little bit more time. But that's the main difference between finer hair versus more dense hair in this application. I know it seems like we're going up pretty high on the head, but believe me when I say by the time all of this lays over, you want to be able to see some of that peeking through. You don't want to cover up this work that you're doing. So for this section, we are going to do a thick weave. And I'm still going to back comb that a bit. So now, since we're switching over to our woven finer sections, I'm switching over to 7 volume. Once again, reason being that we have less hair in these foils, so we don't need as aggressive of a formulation. So when we're working with traditional color blocking, we tend to take a large section of the hair and pre-lighten it from root to end in a very blockaded style. Soft blocking definitely still works with a section, but we create diffusion within this technique with the back combing and with the switching between slices and weaves. Because you're leaving some hair out for this application, starting with slices down here up to weaves up here, that is what is going to start feeding and integrating the hair that's left out into it to where you get softness from the top into thickness of color in the bottom. All right, so for this last section here, it's gonna be, if you notice as we work up to, our sections just get a little bit smaller as well as the weaving becomes more fine. So we're doing an incredibly fine section up here to end this transition. Tiniest bit of back combing. And this will be our final foil. Essentially, we're just gonna hop over to the other side using our exact formulations and our exact slicing and weaving applications and placements. So we'll swing on around to the other side before moving to the front. All right, so we just repeated what we did on this side, and as you can see, you can kind of see the different amounts of hair that's left out. I know it seems like I talked about how it seems like we're going up really high in the back, but by the time you see how this hair lays over, you can see that there's just going to be more of a veil and enough of that blocking can come out and seep out from underneath. You're not gonna lose it by starting too low. Now I'm gonna go remix a little bit more of our lightener and then we're gonna move on to the front. All right, so we're back. We just got done foiling out the back. We're about to do our application in the front. I did wanna mix up some fresh lightener in order to have the best lift and consistency whenever we move to the front, but before I finish the front, because I wanna go directly in right after I'm done with my foiling and do our base color, I'm gonna go ahead and mix up my Vibrance. Today we're using Vibrance 7-65 and 5-57. I'm gonna be using the 13 volume gel and the 6 because we do want to see a little bit more of a significant shift than what the 6 would give us. Erin is about at a level 5. I'd like to bring her up to a 6. So I don't want the amount of shift that 13 would give, but I want more than what 6 would give. You're gonna get somewhere in between 13 and 6 with this. It's really hard to say exactly the percentage, but I do know whenever I use this application at home, I tend to get that nice little bit more of a shift than if I just use the 6 volume cream. I have my Vibrance prepped. I am not going to mix it until I am done with the front, just so that that doesn't start oxidizing. Moving on to the front, we're going to be doing the same application utilizing slices and weaves. When you go to the front, you kind of have to visually decide exactly how high up you're going to go. You're not necessarily going to do as many foils in the front as you have done in the back. So first I'm going to start with a slice right here. Once again, that being our thickest slice, and this is where we're going to use our formula with 20 volume. We are going to backcomb that section for diffusion. Lay down our foil, and then use our fresh batch of mixed up 20 volume. The front pieces tend to be a little finer, so I just roll them up into the foil, pack them up. It's a little bit easier and it helps for the application to also stay out of their face. All right, so here we're gonna do a slightly finer sliced section to once again keep diffusing the amount of hairs in each foil as we work our way up on the head. Go in with our 20 volume formula. Now we're switching to a woven section. We're going to start with a larger weave, and seeing how this is working its way up the head, I think we'll just be doing 2 woven applications working on this angle. Now we're going to switch over to our formula with 7 volume, since we have less hair in these foils. And then one more to finish this off. For this section, we're going to do a baby weave, a very, very fine weave, leaving more hair out. And then go back in with 7. When I decide to place the lightener and get it to stick to the foil, I like to start a little bit far down from the regrowth because it's hottest up here. And then I like to just kind of sort of feather it up to give that nice diffusion. I feel like we need more saturation from the mid to the ends rather than up closer to the root of the hair, given the head heat. All right, we are not done with this side yet. We do still have the bang to account for. So we're going to work our way to the front section. And then I'm going to start working at this angle, doing the exact same slicing to weaving. I think we are just going to, since we can see that we're reaching the top part of our bang and we do want a veil of hair still left to go over that, I'm just going to do one tiny foil with a fine weave above this. So now that we have our front application done with our foils, we're gonna go in and mix up our vibrance. Just to recap, we're doing the 7-57 mixed with the 5-67. We're using half 6 and half 13 volume cream developer in vibrance. The reason I chose these tones is because within our foils, we're gonna be doing a honey blonde color. So I wanted a base color that would reflect those tones as well and complement them, but have enough juxtaposition to where the blonde can really stand out from the rest of the hair color. So now that our foils are done, all I have to do is go in with our vibrance formulation, and we're gonna do a global application on her hair and let that process. By the time the vibrance is done processing, the foils should all be lifted, and we should be able to rinse everything all at once. So for our global application, I'm gonna go through and first cover our root section. Make sure that we have that nice and saturated. And then I'm gonna go back through and pull the rest of the formulation through the mids and ends. By the time our vibrance is done processing, our foils should also be done. So that's another great thing about how expedited this technique can be. You can generally, the foils and the color can all end around the same time. All right, so after about 15 minutes, I went and checked the foils. We needed just a little bit more time for the front. So I laid down a towel just to insulate those foils a little bit more for 5 more minutes. That 5 minutes has passed, and now we're gonna go ahead and check and see where the front is at. If the front is caught up, then we're good to rinse because our vibrance has fully processed. So let's just go ahead and take a peek. Now, ideally, I want this hair to get up to about a level 8 or level 9. If it's pretty cool toned, I don't mind in adding back some warmth if need be. It's looking like we're at that perfect level 9 on the side here. Now, if that were to pull up a little bit more gold, that's also okay. I would just go through and neutralize the amount of gold that I would need to during our final toning process for our blonde. All right, now that we've checked all of Erin's foils and they're all lifted evenly, we're gonna go ahead and rinse. One of the main things we can see here is that we do have still just like that little bit of warmth in there. What is really good about you having used the bleach and tone is if we would have had a lot more warmth in this from our honey blonde formula, I would have to add a lot more neutralization to that, which means that over time that toner is going to kind of fade out and reveal that warmth a little bit more. What we have here is already close to a very desirable honey blonde tone just on its own by using the bleach and tone violet additive, which means that any refinement that we do after this, we're gonna have much better longevity with our tone retention. And then to kind of go over the placement of our foils that we did, you can see how there is the highest concentration of blonding towards the front, and then it just diffuses out as we work to the back. That is the biggest difference between traditional color blocking and soft blocking. The soft blocking, we have diffusion that moves from the front to the back, simultaneously also right underneath here. You'll see in some applications that sometimes people will just apply it asymmetrically, one part to the front, one part to the underneath. Sometimes they'll just do it in the front, or sometimes they'll just do it from the underneath. So it's a technique that you can really evolve based on what your client wants and what the desired result is. You can see as we used vibrance up here, we didn't significantly shift it. We just added a little, we shifted it probably half a level to 1 level, and then added just a little bit of a warm copper gold sheen to it. And that is just so that we can complement the honey blonde that we put in there. So for our vibrance toner, we used 3 different vibrance toners to create the unique blonde shade today. This is one of my favorite ones to create honey blonde. As I said, we're very close to a really pretty honey blonde, but we do want to have a little bit of refinement. We also, whenever you bleach hair, whenever it's purely bleached, it kind of can have this, almost artificial looking sheen to it. So whenever you tone after the fact, you kind of shut that sheen down a little bit and give a softness and a blend that looks very sophisticated still. For our toner, We used 10 grams of 9-65, 10 grams of 9-1, and 2 grams of 8-46. That's 22 grams total, ratio 1-to-1 with our 6 volume gel. And you can see through here that there are a few areas that are just like slightly more warm than others. That -1 is gonna help bring that down and soften it, but then you're gonna have the beige, the chocolate, and the gold to support the warmth. We're using the gel because I think it has a really nice reflection at the end. And yeah, we're gonna apply that and stay tuned. The reason we left it on for about 10 minutes is because we only needed to do minimal neutralization and minimal deposit because we were already, after our pre-lightening, almost where we needed to be. If you needed more neutralizing or more tone deposit on your blonde highlights, you could process it up to 20 minutes to ensure that. So one product I use on pretty much all of my clients is the Fiber Clinic Sealer. The reason why I like to use it on the majority of my clients is because it has heat protection in it. It also deeply nourishes and it instantly repairs split ends. This goes on every client post-color service, no matter what. All right, so after using those products, we just did a simple blowout with a round brush. The reason I blew out her hair is because I want to show and demonstrate to my client what the hair will look like with a smoother, more blown out look. But what I think is really good to do for your client as well is show them how this placement will translate with a textured look. So to prep for our textured look, I'm going to spray in the Osis Freeze all over. I typically use a generous amount of it. I let that dry and then I brush it out. And then at the end, we're gonna go in with our volume up bodifying spray just to add a little bit more texture and body to the hair. After we prep with the freeze and brush it out, we're gonna go through with the flat iron and we're gonna do some textured flat iron waves. And after that, we're gonna go in with our texture craft to add texture and a little bit more volume to the hair. So this is the final result of our honey blonde soft blocking technique. We did a dual application where we prepped with our foils using BLONDME 9+ Lightener with our bleach and tone additive. In between each of the foils, we deposited using Vibrance. After we rinsed, we toned using another Vibrance formula for our honey blonde color. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed our honey blonde soft blocking technique. I'm at Hair by Caitlin Tyczka on Instagram. You can like and subscribe to this page if you want to see more fashion color looks like this. If you have any questions, drop them below. Myself or Schwarzkopf would be more than happy to answer them for you. Thanks again.